begin?
Yeah,
Yep, spotlight's on you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, good evening, everybody, and it's an absolute pleasure to be in your company once again. To all those familiar faces, to all those that are unfamiliar, I want to say thank you and for the support, and thank you for the encouragement. Um, what can I say? My name is Blaine. Um, Born and bred in West London, Paddington, 1968. My parents are from the island of Dominica, one of the many British territories. One of the British, as part of our colonial heritage, so to speak. Came here in the 60s, 50s. My dad and my mum followed suit. They were young people, part of the post-war building effort, now commonly known as the Windrush generation, for what we know that symbolizes the heartfelt issues that our elders have been through in recent years, almost punctuating the pressure and prejudices that our communities have lived through, particularly those from the Caribbean in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Well, I've been an occupational therapist since 1994. I trained at the London School of Occupational Therapy, which was eventually Brunel College and then Brunel University. I had a interesting training. When I qualified, I worked in social services, London Borough of Hillingdon as a social services OT, and lived in Wembley with my parents until eventually moving up to the north of England to a place like Nottingham, getting married, get settled, and settling in Essex eventually. Where I became involved in a lot of community projects, community issues, and a one-time local politician. And that was the outreach of my kind of role, emerging activism, which is what I've come to know it as. I qualified with my PhD in 2010, working and studying part-time at the University of Greenwich. My study was an ethnographic study with a public health twist, exploring the lives of women with systemic lupus erythematosus, the autoimmune disease. And the upshot of my study was that more needs to be done to support and highlight the needs of people with that condition, particularly during end of life, as other illness conditions seem to have more notoriety at end of life and hence a better quality of care. That study was a case study, and it allowed me to interview members of parliament, heads of charities like Lupus UK, as well as the women who suffered with this disease. And I was yearning in 2010. I was still involved in social services to get a break in the higher education sector, and it wouldn't be until 2016 that I finally got an opportunity to work as a lecturer in a further education college in Southend. So I was a really highly educated, overqualified somebody making a sideways move from social services, where I was a deputy manager, advanced practitioner, to becoming a lecturer.
Go and sit down.
It's becoming a lecturer in
Okay, go and sit down before she comes.
in
Go
health
back
and
to your
social
house.
care. Okay. So that was my journey into education. It was tough because I collected a lot of rejections. I don't know if it was my interview style that was poor, but I will now list all the universities that rejected me with a PhD to become an OT lecturer. Worcester University, Bournemouth University, London South Bank University twice, Coventry University, Coventry University, Oxford Brookes. There's a little story behind that, Oxford Brookes. Huddersfield University, Bedfordshire University. And so over a 10-year period, collecting all these rejections, this is their loss, but I work with colleagues today that don't have a PhD and that are their senior lecturers. You know, I'm one of the most highly experienced occupational therapists within my team, with people that don't have PhDs or got their PhDs recently. Yeah, and so I became inspired by an OT apprentice who I worked with when I was an advanced practitioner in East London. And he said to me, Blaine, challenge the decision. You know, that's what BAME UK is about, isn't it? Challenge the decision. But I'd become so fatigued, if you like, with the idea of here's a black man again using the race card. I became so fatigued with that notion. You know, it was one of my white mentees that said, Blaine, challenge the decision, man. And he happened to be a grime artist, and he cut his teeth on the grime circuit moving with black brothers and sisters. So he's almost flexing like a black brother. But I challenge that decision. So what do you mean? I said, and this guy's 15, 20 years younger than me. But he said, Blaine asked a few questions. What do you mean? He said, ask for if you like, when you have to make a request under the Data Protection Act, ask some questions about their diversity, things like this. So that's what I did. I asked. They phoned me, Blaine, we'd like to make Oxford Brookes. We are sorry you didn't get the job. Thanks for coming to visit and thanks for the interview, but you didn't get the job. Is there any feedback you'd like? Yes, please. But I have a few questions, I said. Can you imagine what it's like when I enter an interview room and there's 5 or 4 white faces there? Can you imagine what that's like? They started to pause, started to reflect. Well, I said, I'm 50 now, and I was born in this country, grew up in a council estate in Kilburn. I have my PhD, highly educated, ambitious, got teaching experience. When last did you interview a British-born black man of Caribbean ancestry in your department? Well, she said, I'm nearly retiring and I've never ever shortlisted a British-born Afro-Caribbean. Never. You've never interviewed a British-born Afro-Caribbean candidate. She said, I said, well, my son is a few years, you know, he's 15. What's it going to take when he's 50 to get shortlisted? Are we going to have to wait 100 years? She said, Blaine, you were a good candidate, but you didn't score the points. We do a point scoring when we interview. So you're charming. Less of the charm. Answer the question. Score the points. You know, I took it in. But she said, Blaine, you don't have much to do to really make your profile or your CV better. You don't have specific faculty experience. And she said, if you live locally, we would easily offer you a job as an AL, an associate lecturer. Pardon me? We would offer you the job as an associate lecturer, but you live so far away. Folks in the chat box, keep it going. What do you think I said? This is a quiz. What do you think I said? What do you think my reaction was? Well, I think I said something like, I'll cartwheel to Oxford if you were to offer me a job from Essex. That's no problem for me to get there to do the job. She said, Blaine, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to make sure in our next round of invitations, we're going to invite you in to deliver some lessons. That was Oxford Brookes University giving me a break because I challenged the decision, because my white body said, why challenge the decision? I got so saturated by that point, I probably would have gone, okay, thank you. We're good at that, aren't we? Thank you. It took a conversation to create some knocking on doors for an opportunity. So 2020, pandemic year, I got my opportunities. I had about 3 teaching slots. The Leeds Beckett University job advert came out and I applied. Small print of the job. What does the small print say in most job adverts, folks? In the chat box. What does the small print? What does the small print often say? The small print often says something like, and let me see if anyone's put a little chat. The small print says something about we
Sorry.
are.
Sorry, Blaine, I'm just thinking in this day and age, surely they didn't put anything restrictive.
No,
Surely not.
definitely not. But this is a job advert, and it says we welcome people from ethnic minority communities. Mikey, Nikki, you're laughing, you're smiling. We welcome. We welcome. Yes, underrepresented groups, please apply. I got in touch with the faculty, the guy. I said, you know what? A couple of questions. One, there's a revolving door for these jobs. Someone from another university will leave their job, apply for yours, get it. It creates a hole in their university. They have to apply for jobs. It's like a round robin. How does someone like me break in? I've come from further education. I've got my PhD. I've got my teacher training certificate. I've got 25 years industry experience. I'm keen. I'm hungry. And by the way, what have your university done for the black community where you're from? Tell me some of the legacy stuff that you got. And he replied, the reply was, please apply. We will welcome your application. Okay, I pushed through. The interview, I must be honest, was really demanding, but I was up for it. I was in my house. I had nobody to say to me, come in, sit down. It was on a video call like this. I was in my house and I was happy, comfortable, and I answered the questions. 4 points per question. 4 examples. Bang, next question. Dang, 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 dang. Got a call that day. And I know this is kind of powerful. When you go for a job interview, if they want you, they're calling you the day. But I've had interviews where they say to you, we're still interviewing more people, and by next week, we're going to let candidates know. Now, my alter ego wants to say in future when I go for them jobs, you know what, don't bother. Because if you really want the person, you're calling them today, otherwise they're going to get snapped up somewhere else. That's what my alter ego wants to say. Sometimes I will use that line. They call the same day. Blaine, is between you and someone else. It's between 2 of you. It's really tight. So it's the end of the day. We said we'd call you back. It's 5. So we'll call in the morning to let you know our decision. And thank God the next morning they call, like to offer you the role. Wow, that's like climbing up a hill, isn't it? Climbing up a hill. I was industry sharp. I wasn't a polished academic from the OT flex. Cut my teeth in further education. For years, I've been on the road doing independent presentations. So it wasn't as if I didn't know how to do a PowerPoint, design PowerPoints, didn't know how to present. But for years, if you think I've been missing out on interviews, missing out, not good enough, someone's better than you, someone else has got it. And I'm thinking, we need a diverse workforce. You need black, brown, Indian, white, you need a whole mix. But a lot of teaching faculties at the time, 5 years ago, are predominantly white. It's probably changed now, or changing, because there's people in their 20s, 30s, 40s at the mix. I'm in my 50s. You understand me? Come late, but highly qualified and a bit industry sharp, but very practical and pragmatic. I don't want to be a boffin, because 18-year-olds and mature students, they don't want to be taught by boffins. They want to talk by people with practical know-how. It just so happens I can write essays and know about theories here and there. And I got to teach and prepare future OTs for the business world. Business, the real world. getting the job done, working long hours, dealing with complaints from members of parliament, judicial reviews, and being ready for the bumps in the road. So I'm proud of that preamble, and I hope you found that a useful backdrop, really, because fast forward into the role, I met Odeth Richardson in 2022. I think she'd become elected as chair, and I was just following all this feed on social media. Didn't know her or anyone in BAME UK. For years, I've just been out there, a Lone Ranger, working hard, trying to climb up the greasy pole, feed my family. You know the cycle, you know. And I immediately got in touch and said, "Hi, I'm a senior lecturer at Leeds Beckett. I would love you to come and give a talk to my students." This was in a week of her being elected, and thank the Lord she responded. And from then on, we've formed an active alliance in terms of cognitive thinking and strategic ideas around equality, diversity, inclusion, cultural humility, all the latest buzzwords, cultural immunity and stuff like that. So she was done symbolically for me. She's reached a hand out and pulled me up. How many Black scholars, professionals that we met in business, they're not putting their hand out to no one. It's every man for themselves. I'm living that now. I'm living that now in my job. All our brothers and sisters are staying in the lane. But here we are today at BAME UK meeting. We're reaching our hand out to each other. I went to visit Odeth in Newcastle in 2023 or 2022, December, and she slipped me a bit of paper. She said, "Blaine, I want to write a book." And the other day I was sifting through some papers and I found it. Sorry, I'm looking for my charger. And she just gave me some notes on a paper, and then the rest is history. I came back to her with an outline. She said, "Yes, go for it, love it." And then we formulated an essence that we as a Caribbean people have suffered so much for the journey that our ancestors made, for us being here in the OT profession too, that there's an urgency. The 75 years of Windrush generation is almost a slap in the face, a recognition of our elders, because it took an insult from the government to recognize them, and named after a ship captured by captured as part of World War II. The SS Windrush was a German vessel that the Nazis used, of all the things to symbolize our present day essence. Yes. And so the textbook really, which what we're formulating, is a way to allow our people and our white majority audience to get a sense of this is who we are. When you knock on our doors, or when you treat us with stroke, or when you wonder why are they suffering from high blood pressure, you get a sense of it. Written by occupational therapists of Caribbean heritage, the only group in the British context whose ancestors were enslaved on the plantations of America and the Caribbean. No other ethnic group. And the inhumanity was significant and torturous. Even when African slaves ran to the hills as maroons, they were hunted and hanged, for their freedom, even when the British couldn't get to them. Even when freedom, inverted commas, was passed, the Morant Bay massacre, we were homeless to all intents and purposes because we had to get a job of master when we're free. And who's going to employ someone who you was paying nothing? We protested, and Bogle and others got shot by the British military. We have to remember these things in the same way we remember the pain and loss of World War II. Inhumanity was created by our own British historical leading figures. The textbook then is our way of saying we're standing on the shoulders of others for future generations, future readers, it's a legacy for you as well.